For the panel, I would like to invite Della, Gashao, and Pinat, union leaders and project leads who will discuss the successful initiatives, but also the challenges and the barriers. I think I can start with asking you a question, Della, or if you would like to briefly introduce yourself for a few minutes first, that is also fine. Um, Perhaps we can do that first, and then once you've done that, I will ask you the question. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dimple. Hello, everyone. Good evening from Jakarta. I'm Della from gajimu.com, part of WageIndicator Foundation. Thank you.
Great, Della. I will just stick to you first and introduce or leave some room for introductions for the other speakers. The question I would have for you is whether you can share specific actions or initiatives that you have undertaken to address gender inequalities in Indonesia.
Yes, Dimple, thanks. As Denny mentioned in the data presentation, in Indonesia, we run an initiative named Makin Terang, Improving Employment and Workers' Representation. This initiative brings together 4 national garment trade unions and trade union supporting organizations at national and international levels. As a continuation of the previous initiative, our goal is to enhance the presentation and the voices of underrepresented workers like women, workers with disabilities, contract workers, and youth. One of our notable developments in this initiative is the workers' priority pools. It is more scalable than decent work check. It gathers comprehensive needs across factories beyond basic labor laws. And up until now, we recorded over 8,500 gender-related voices, reflecting specific description of workers' aspiration or grievances. These crucial insights were then encouraged to be brought to the bargaining table to challenge the trend of the bipartite negotiation in most factories, which were often dominated by issues like wages and job security over gender-specific concern. To enhance women participation in data collecting activities, we increased the number of female data collectors from 1 to 5. In the selection process, we specifically selected women through the union partners' recommendations, as we already had 8 men as data collectors. Furthermore, we implemented quotas in our respondents selection process based on gender and working status. As Danny mentioned before, currently 72% of our respondents are women. Another thing, Dimple, in the training on evidence-based advocacy and CBA negotiation using data, we invite 3 participants from each factory level union leaders, and at least 2 of them must be women. And during the training, we also use a gender lens in preparing for social dialogue to address gender injustice through policies and creating individual sensitivity and empowerment. This gender-focused approach has already led to significant changes. So a male union leader testified that he was finally moved to negotiate a lactation room in the factory after attending the training, even though he often saw his member pumping breast milk in the warehouse. That's how data usage in the workplace happened. Another expanded use of data brought up by the National Commission on Violence Against Women. They include decent work check data on gender and family responsibilities in their annual report and their independent report for the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action 2024. And also to National Civil Society Network used the data to push for the ratification of ILO Convention 190 and criticize the new law on maternal and child welfare, which includes protection for working mothers. And the other action I can share you is that trade union partners are using the data collection activity entry point to expand their reach within the brand supply chain, targeting non-unionized factories. And most important to see more women as trade union members and inclusive representation within the union structure. Trade union reported that since the organizing activities in this program began, they have been 30 new unions at the factory level with more than 5,300 new members, and 65% of them are women.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Della. Very impressive numbers that you're mentioning and effective measures that have already been taken. You mentioned that there was also an increase of female data collectors, and I was quickly just wondering whether there was also a change seen in the type of data that you could collect, because now more women are asking perhaps the female workers
Yes.
and also the underrepresented workers. Did you also see a change in data?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, we started with the female data collectors, and then the method with the workers priority pools, so it can be used by everyone. And then we try to find the specific voices. So like I mentioned before, it is women, and then we also have voices from disabilities and they're needed, like facilities, special facilities, and others. So yeah, and then we can, by the data, we can brought it to the negotiation table. So that's what we do.
Yeah, very good. I think this session already shows the power of data very well. Thank you, Della. I will move to Ethiopia for a bit now. And Gasho, Tesfa, would you perhaps want to introduce yourself briefly before I ask you the question?
Thank you, Dimple. Thank you very much. I'm Gasha from WageIndicator Ethiopia team.
All right. Yes, thank you. Welcome, and thank you for being here. The question that I have for you is, what have been the most significant lessons learned in implementing, gender-focused initiatives?
Thank you again, Dimple. So since 2018, we have been implementing this decent work check project. And in our project, we frequently observed that there is gender pay gap. And there is also gender difference in participation of women. So women are, as Danny indicated earlier, very dominant in different work settings. In Ethiopia, we observed that more than 80% of the workers in pharmacy and factories are women, yet different levels of leadership are under men. So these observations and, of course, the findings from our decent work check survey led us to do a women-only meeting. So since 2024, we have been doing this women-only meeting just to tackle the gender inequality, to foster gender equality and to increase women participation. In this regard, the women-only meeting we conducted showed the following results. For instance, we have been observing that these women in that women-only forum, they have been addressing gender-specific issues like gender inequalities, workplace biases, reproductive health issues, and societal expectations. They have been freely talking about this stuff. Had men or other people been there, they wouldn't have exposed these important issues that significantly impact their life. The other significant lesson we learned is women developed this collective action. When they come together, they become a force of change. Their voice is going to be heard, and we strongly believe in the next few years, these voices will be heard, and they will definitely affect policymakers. So that is another important impact. Yet, another lesson we learned is this women-only meeting helped us to encourage honest conversation amongst the women themselves. These women would have been in difficult situation, and they wouldn't have been talking about some of the issues that men could underestimate or men could misunderstood. For instance, these women have been talking about the impact of the importance of this what you call this pads, for instance, for during this menstrual cycle. Look, for instance, if a man and a woman do the same job, they are going to earn the same wage. Yet the women do have additional costs like this, the need for pads and that sort. So these things have been very hot issue among us, the women, that these factories or industries should consider the extra costs these women are incurring. The other thing we learned from this women-only meeting is we observed that women have been building strong support network among themselves. For instance, in one of our women-only meeting, they said we have to develop a women-only social media group where they are going to share their experiences, their challenges, and whenever there are opportunities, they also share these opportunities for other members to exploit. And the other one is this women-only meeting has served as a safe and supportive environment. They have been supporting emotionally, they have been supporting each other, they have been helping each other. So this women-only meeting is essential in addressing peculiar problems or challenges, problems which are peculiar to women. And this has really brought us the need to scale up the pilot project that is the women-only meeting. Thank you, Dimple.
Thank you, Gasha. It's very empowering to hear the empowerment there and the collective actions of female workers. Do you also see their underrepresented workers or member unions included in these types of talks, or is it mainly focusing on women for now?
Actually, our project is the Decent Work Check project, which is we do collect data from all members of from all workers, including men and women. But in the women-only meeting, we have only the women. So the issue is totally about being a woman.
All right, great. Thank you. Very clear. I would like to move to Pinar. Could you also briefly introduce yourself before I ask you the question?
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm honored to be here today representing Özeplikiş. It's a trade union over 38,000 members in Turkey, textiles, garment and leather sector. And I'm head of the International Relations Department as well as president of Women's Committee. And I I represent Hakish Confederation in ETUC and ITUC Women's Committees, as well as ITUC Women's Committees.
Thank you, Pinar. You must have a very long CV with all the impressive work that you're doing. The question that I have for you is, can you highlight a particular initiative that you have considered promising or innovative in advancing gender equality?
Sure, thank you so much. Actually, I would like to start by giving you some snapshots of the women workers in Turkish textile sector. In the opening, we've seen data already. But just to give you a snapshot, 60% of the workforce is usually female, especially in textile, but in the garment sector, these numbers are even more. And they are mostly in low paid and insecure jobs. They have low educational level and they earn less than men for similar work, of course, and underrepresented in leadership as well. And gender-based violence and harassment remain widespread, especially in non-unionized workplaces. And they are usually in a very precarious working conditions, and they face discrimination due to maternity, caregiving responsibilities, and this makes career progression even harder for those women. And actually, the Öziplik, as Öziplik, when we first start working for empowering women workers, we ask ourselves, why are not women are joining the unions? Because the union representatives, even though there are like high representation in the sector, is very low. The reasons were very clear: workplace intimidation, lack of awareness, cultural barriers. So we took action, and we first established the Women's Committee in trade union in 2012. So we have like 13 years already ahead of us, and we had a lot of work progress with the Women's Committee. We create a safe space for engagement. And we enhanced women workers' sense of belongings to the unions, first of all, and they were the ones who were requesting to bring more women into the union, and we increased their participation in the organizing process. We brought more women in to organize, ensuring greater representation and involvement in the union activities. This was actually very important to involve the women in it, and Women's Committee's existence is also ensuring the outreach to all the women workers in the workplace to find out the solutions as well. But then we realized that while more women are joining the unions, they were still missing from leadership positions. And to changing this, we launched Raising Women Leaders in Trade Unions project, and we organized comprehensive leadership training programs, equipping women with the confidence and skills, and so that they can step up. But their representation still remained low, and not due to lack of ambition, but because of unpaid care work. They had to take care of the elderly, they have to take care of the housework. So they said, we cannot really take place in the leadership positions because we have duties. So this led us to implement reconciliation of work and family life project. As you can see, step by step, finding the solutions to the problems. We introduce work and family life reconciliation training, addressing the hidden burden of care work. And one of our biggest breakthrough came when we trained men on gender equality, helping them understand their role in creating more balanced workplaces. And women union participation grow from 20% to 36%, but also women shop stewards numbers are increased from 5% to 25%. So it's a major shift towards gender equal representation, I think, with the initiatives that we did. Beyond leadership, we also tackled gender-based violence and harassment, a major barrier in the women's safety and dignity at the work. And Öziplik has been leading advocate for ILO's Convention 190, ensuring it's integrated into factory-level collective bargaining agreements. And this holds employers accountable for preventing gender-based violence and harassment and establishing clear complaint mechanism. With this initiative, we established the social dialogue platform with involvement of employers, trade unions, worker representatives, as well as government representatives and international organizations, obviously ILO, UN Women, UNFPA, and employers union and other trade unions in the sector as well. And of course, the brands, international brands, specifically the ones who signed global framework agreement with Industrial Global Union was part of our social dialogue platform. This is very sustainable. We established the initiative in 2019, and we are regularly meeting every year to find concrete solutions to prevent violence and harassment in the workplaces. We actually launch workplace training programs, gender equality, labor rights, prevention of harassment and violence. What are the type of the violences and harassment? How can they tackle this in the workplace? We give different module trainings to white collar, blue collar, and gray collar workers. And of course, we are in the process of monitoring and actually verification and validation, setting up an independent gender-sensitive complaint mechanisms, expanding anonymous reporting channels for women workers. Those are the issues, some of the issues that we are still discussing within the social dialogue platform. Recently, 20 companies signed zero tolerance to violence and harassment policy document, which also commit to the CBA. Like, we are going to have a legally binding CBA provision on preventing violence and harassment. What this experience has taught us is that gender inequality is not just about one issue. It's a systemic challenge that requires comprehensive solution. through union engagement, leadership, development, and gender-sensitive training, we are proving that change is not possible, but it is already happening. So the question now is, how do we scale these successes? How do we ensure that more brands, employers, and policymakers take action? Because without true representation, any discussion about fair wages, safe workplaces, and sustainable supply chain remains incomplete. Thank you.
Many thanks, Pinat. I think we can dedicate a whole session on all the wonderful successes that you have already had and done. I was indeed also wondering how to scale these successes and also how brands reacted, because I can imagine there could also be some hesitance from them. But good to hear that quite some brands are involved and willing. I think that's key for this HRDD and hopefully with the mandatory HRDD as well. Just to stay a bit on time, I will get back to you in a bit, but I would ask Gashel, I'm not sure, I don't see you on the screen anymore, but I hope you're still with us. Are you, Gashel? Can you confirm?
Yeah, I'm here.
You are, okay, great.
Yeah.
I have an additional question for you. These women-only meetings that you talked about, how have they impacted the participation and maybe even more leadership of women in union activities? And because I can really understand that the safe space has been very successful and impactful, but what happened then outside of the women-only meetings and fora? Did women participation in unions and even in leadership positions also increased? Was there also willingness for the more male-led environments to welcome women into their meetings, negotiations, and overall unions?
Yeah, definitely. This is really a very nice question. Thank you, Dimple. So basically, we need to have a more comprehensive assessment after the women-only meeting, just to exactly figure out what kind of impact this women-only meeting do have. But for the sake of, for the time being, I would love to reflect on some of the observations we have had during this women-only meeting and some of the information I have had from some of the participants through this phone call after the women-only meeting. So one of the most significant limitation to gender equality was lack of awareness, but this women-only meeting has provided them this opportunity to raise their own, their awareness of their rights, privileges, and that sort. So the participants said that we didn't know this, we didn't know that, so we didn't ask. What we know is only coming to the workplace, doing our job, and going back to home. So this awareness raising is one of the most important impact of the women only meeting. The other one is, in most cases, the women lost hope. In a sense, they don't want to ask about their rights. They believe or they feel like asking their rights or their privileges is something unnecessary or something undeserved. So during this women-only meeting, sometimes all women are not, the same. Some are well aware of their rights, so they share their rights. They tell their experiences to other women. They share their, feelings, opinions, and that sort. And the other women learn it from these experiences, opinions, and that sort. And we also observed that these women strongly believe if they come together, they can be a force of change. That is the most important thing that we noted. So they believe if they organize, and of course that organization is quite possible through this women only meeting or this kind of forum, and they believe if they come together, they can ask for their rights, they can involve in different levels of this leadership so that their rights can be the focus. Their rights can also become a focus of attention on the part of these policymakers, factory managers, trade union leaders, the federation, and that sort. So they believe they have to come together, and they have to, I mean, like, even some say, why don't we have our own trade union? I mean, it's like something like trade union, another trade union under trade union. So this indicates the need these women do have to gather, to organize themselves, and to ask for their rights that way. The other thing is, like, as Danny showed you a couple of minutes ago, in most cases, the trade union leaders are men. So during these collective bargaining agreements, it is these men who are going to agree with the factories or the different stakeholders. In this, as a result of this, some of the interests, rights, and privileges of women may be overlooked, or they may not get proper attention from these different stakeholders. As a result, these women may become suppressed, or their rights might be not respected. So they decided to come together, to organize themselves, to use different social media platforms so that they can actively participate in the different levels of this leadership, and they can bring their interests and rights into focus during these collective bargaining agreements. So this women-only meeting has given us has given us the opportunity to note some of the problems that men may not, quote unquote, may not understand, and these problems might be overlooked, or they may be dismissed, or they may not even be raised by these men during these collective bargaining agreements and during other other agreements between the trade union and the factory. So this women-only meeting, they believe that they have to organize and they have to take their questions even beyond the factory. That is what we learned from. That is the immediate impact. Generally, they become motivated, strengthened, energized, and now they feel like hopeful that they can fight for their rights. Thank you, Dimple.
Thank you, Gasha. I really like the fact that you started your answer with that many female workers don't feel that they are aware of their rights, or they don't feel that it's even worth fighting for it. And then through your whole answer, you take us into the process of how that changes, because you have the women-only meetings and fora, that they even would want to start a trade union within a trade union, perhaps a women's committee, and that this force of change is really something that you can witness from this very specific action, and that they're even advocating for their rights through different types of platforms. And yeah, just to see that switch from not wanting to talk about your rights to just fighting for it. So it's really good, and I can't wait to stay updated with all the more data and information that you will collect after this. I can imagine that this is the first step, really organizing the women, empowering them, and then later on we will definitely see more leadership positions filled by women. I think even working together with cases in Indonesia and Turkey can already show how that could be done. And there are many more trade unions in the world, so I hope there will be many lessons learned. Dela, I also have an additional question for you. I think you sort of answered it already, but the question is, how have bipartite negotiations evolved to include more gender-related issues, in particular in Indonesia?
Dimple, there are many factors, including legal regulation with the existence of the sexual violence crime law, its new law, the maternal and child welfare law, Also, OSH regulation in the workplace that recognize psychological factors as assessment, and so on, including the International Labor Standard. These are the driving forces for negotiating gender-related issues in the workplace. That's why some trade unions in Indonesia have actively engaged in advocating for stronger legal frameworks and policies that protects women's rights at work at the national level. Despite the normative rules, consciousness around creating workplace free from gender-based violence and promoting equality is growing within both trade union and employers. And the opportunity is there in the bipartite and CBA negotiation. However, it is important to note that the density of trade union in Indonesia remains low, at only 12%. The problem of more than one union being prevalent in garment companies is also an issue. But despite these obstacles, opportunities for advancing gender-related negotiation exist, and our ongoing efforts aim to further empower women, both in trade union and the broader workplace.
Thank you, Della. Yeah, it really shows that multiple actors, players, and stakeholders are really needed to ensure a decrease of issues centered towards gender and intersectionality. Pinar, I also have another question for you. With the knowledge about when the knowledge about the gender pay gap is limited, how have you built awareness and driven action on it, in particular on gender pay gap?
Thank you for the question, Dimple. Dani already made a presentation about Turkey gender pay gap data, which Anchor Institute was done, specifically in garment sector. There are some research in general by the ILO shows that 15.6% is the also gender pay gap in Turkey, together with the Turkstat. Well, here, I think more concerning in some factors, fewer than 10% women is only earning the living wage, while significantly higher percentage of men do. And this reflects not just a wage gap, but an economic security gap that reflects women workers at every level. And we are in the stage of understanding the gender pay gap. In 2019, ILO made a conference, and the name of the conference was Understanding the Gender Pay Gap. So looking at the Pay Transparency Directive in EU and all other developments, I mean, when we look at Turkey, we are really in a beginning stage of understanding what gender pay gap is. Many women don't even realize their earnings less than their male colleagues because wage transparency is rare and salary discussions are discouraged. And brands typically only check, I mean, wage grids most of the time, because when we come together, they share some findings sometimes regarding the garment sector wage discrepancies and gender pay gap. And when we ask, like, what are the really criteria to check the wages, they usually say that we just check the wage grids. So as a application, we think that there should be multi-step approach for raising awareness. First, we need to challenge to make the gender pay gap visible. Did we do a very concrete action? Not really. I mean, I cannot say we take a lot of steps, but however, we plan to partner with research institutes to work on gender-based wage differences, to find out about the gender-based differences in the factories, and preparing reports in simple worker-friendly formats, training women workers about their rights to equal pay under the Turkish labor law and international conventions. We also are planning to train trade unions, because trade unions' conception and awareness are very low on the gender pay gap again, because when we think that we signed the CBAs, there are everyone who is earning the equal wage, but the factors, I think they needed to know about the factors also. And working together with NGOs to analyze the gender pay gap deeply. These are some of the initiatives that we are planning to do very soon. And of course, equal pay clauses to ensure women and men receive the same wages for equal work. Those are the initiatives that we are working on, and wage audits in unionized workplaces to monitor the pay disparities. H&M made a CBA benchmarking toolkit together with our union. We were able to question those CBAs. Where are the equal pay, or are they having equal pay, or some of the factors and some of the questions regarding the gender equality which helped. So these type of initiatives could be also promoted. And leadership skills training, as we did as an application, I think this was contributing the gender pay gap to be better. I mean, not having any gender pay gap. We give leadership skills to increase their representation in decision making, and also addressing the unpaid care work and work-life balance was also a factor for women increased participation in higher wage jobs. We also trained the women CBA negotiators to reduce the income disparity so that they could negotiate better. And also, we urge brands and factories to disclose salary data and conduct internal wage equity assessments. I mean, those are some of the steps that we did and we are planning to do. But I think closing the gender pay gap is not just about fairness, it's about economic justice. Through data transparency, collective bargaining, and leadership development, real progress is possible. But we need more brands and policymakers and employers to take action. Wage equality, I mean, if we are talking wage equality, it shouldn't be a negotiation, it should be the norm. And because without wage equality, there cannot be true action towards gender equality.
Yes, Pinar, thank you. I feel a fire burning inside of me when you said that about wage equality needing to be a norm. It's exactly true. And I hope there's a lot of brands and other stakeholders that played their part as a participant in this session. Yeah, we just need, even if they're not in the session, we need to be continuing our work in advocating for this globally. I have one last question. Well, it's actually more your question. You already raised it before. I'm not sure if anyone can answer it. Otherwise, we will dive into the Q&A. But do any of you, Della, Gashel, and Pinar, feel that you have the answer to the question, what steps are necessary to replicate these successful practices on a larger scale or in other contexts? Because with HRDD, and especially it becoming mandatory, we would expect, of course, companies and brands to wanting to involve themselves into this and really have valuable, meaningful stakeholder engagement practices in place. Do any of you have any idea already that you would like to share? If not, also really fine, because looking at the time, and at the amount of questions, I also want to dive into the Q&A session of the part. But if any of you has a suggestion, please feel free to take the floor.
I can start if you like, Dimple.
Sure.
Just to finish up also with my statements that I think, as you said, meaningful stakeholder engagement, I think this is really key to tackle the gender inequalities, because we have very much proven success on how we can tackle together. I mean, as I said in my earlier answer to your question about social dialogue platform that we set, there are concrete actions. If we are together, we can make a structural change and we can actually build accountability within the stakeholders. Therefore, making gender equality a core for permanent and part of human rights due diligence processes in global supply chain also needed. And scaling training and leadership development for women workers, addressing unpaid care work at policy level. I mean, all the issues that we have been already spoke about, women needed. Replicating successful gender equality initiatives requires a shift from voluntary commitments to more institutionalized frameworks. And trade unions, brands, policymakers must take collective responsibility to ensure that these best practices become industry-wide standard, not only in the textile and garment sector, but throughout all the sectors. So if we want a real change, gender equality must be embedded into labor rights, corporate policies, and supply chain accountability. Because without wage equality, safe workplaces, and real representation, economic justice just remains outreach.
Great answer. I will just quickly also share this meaningful stakeholder engagement framework that we have, which has been done by the Stitch project, which is specifically on textile. But I agree, indeed, this is not only for specific sectors, but for all sectors worldwide. Gashel, I see your mic is already open, so please take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Dimple, again. So just to replicate this women-only meeting or this kind of successful projects, the first thing that we need to have is partnering with different stakeholders, like branders, even the government itself, and those factories and federations and so on. So after having this partnership, we need to have clear assessment on this gender gap or gender inequalities. For instance, in our case, we have first assessed that there is clear gender inequality in these different factories. So we initiated the pilot project on this women-only meeting. So after having this clear assessment of the presence of these gaps and or the nature of the gaps, maybe the next step is to have a full-scale project on providing this women-only meeting. And I also suggest there should be monitoring and evaluation of the impact of this kind of project. So the monitoring and evaluation should be part and parcel of the scale of the larger or the scaled projects. That is what I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gashel. I think M&E really shows the power of everything in this whole session, and yeah, it can also convince and ease social dialogue, I think, as a tool. Della, go ahead.
Yeah, Dimple. Yeah. Just adding to what Pinar and Gashel said, we are in Indonesia actively documenting successful practices within our program and making the data publicly available. Because this transparency allows others to learn from our experience. This is the example as WageIndicator does with the CBA database, which provides full text CBA on the website. So this approach enables stakeholders to easily get information on CBAs that successfully contain breakthrough in gender-based clauses or other clauses that breakthrough. By documenting these practices and sharing them publicly, we can inspire our other organization and also trade union to adopt similar measures, ultimately fostering a more supportive work environment. That's all.
Many thanks, Della. I know for sure we should just fill a whole calendar with all these types of sessions because time is flying and we only have 9 more minutes left. So I would like to go to the Q&A and just also to give Dani some room, I would jump to a question towards her, but it's also to others in the panel, of course. The question, Dani, is how can companies address gender bias in promotion and training to ensure equal opportunities for women and men?
Yeah, I think Pinar already touched upon this in her intervention, so I want to connect to that. And she said basically that we first need data to recognize that there is a gender pay gap and that there are gender bias. So again, sorry to repeat myself, but it's really, really important to have transparency within companies and who should basically review regularly their internal data and processes that are related to all these. So to wages, so not only the gap itself, but also pay scales, how they're structured, how wages are set, how promotions are given, who is getting the trainings and all of that. So once you have the data and once you can track things, then you can also take steps to address the disparities. So my answer would be data in this case.
Spoken like a real data director. There is a question also to more on Indonesia, so it's more for Della and Ita, I think. The question is, does the increase in non-compliances in Indonesia mean that workers are more aware of their rights? So that's why they raise their concerns perhaps more in 2023 than in 2024, or the other way around.
Yeah, Pinar, I have, sorry, Dimple, I have I have response. So it is possible that the increase in non-compliance is related to the growing number of non-unionized. So we go to the more non-unionized factories in 2024. And then workers may have less support and fewer resources to advocate for their rights, which could lead to a rise in reported non-compliance. Without the protection and assistance typically provided by unions, workers might face greater challenge in addressing their concern, so making them more likely to raise issues when they become aware of them. This combination of increased awareness and the absence of union support could be contributed to the trend.
Thank you, Della. Another question I've seen is what extent, I think it's to all in the panel, to what extent do current due diligence practices address gender equality issues in the garment and footwear sector? Would you like to take the floor, Gasha, or did you accidentally unmute? That's also fine. I mean, I think also this is the reason why we will have legislation on this, right? It showed that for 30 years, at least, the voluntary HRDD has not proven to be that effective. I mean, we've seen some of the cases that worked, but unfortunately, it needs to become mandatory and under certain legislation to really force brands and others in the supply chain to take action. If any of you have another more satisfying answer, please feel free. Otherwise, I will go to the next question.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. There was another question. How can companies and international agencies improve due diligence to better address the rights of women workers, particularly in relation to equal pay and working conditions? I think it has already been addressed a few times, but if anything has been left unsaid, please feel free.
I could say, Dimple, that I think it's really, really important to engage with the trade unions, because trade unions play a critical role on monitoring HRDD compliance and advocating for policy reforms. So we have to really underline how important to become together with the trade unions, and multi-stakeholder approach also needed. Engaging with ILO, government bodies, brands, and civil society can enhance HRDD's impact on gender equality. So also maybe Turkey's trade relationship with EU could be leveraged to push for mandatory HRDD requirements as well.
Yes, indeed. I have a follow-up question, which I often hear when I'm giving the trainings in other countries, is when do companies know what trade union to talk to? Have one of you encountered this type of question or maybe situation where brands want to speak or want to involve trade unions, but they're unsure which trade union to invite, or perhaps they're like yellow unions that they talk to, or representatives that have been pushed forward, but not the actual representation of the workers?
I think Industrial Global Union is key here in a global level, and Industrial Europe Federation and some other federation in the other sectors. I mean, because we are affiliate of Industrial Global Union and Industrial Europe Federation, and one of the key and very most important criteria for to become member of this organization is to be independent and really represent the workers. So they can easily go to Industrial Global Union website to see which affiliates are in certain countries that they production, and they can communicate with the trade unions. And I get this question when I was in OECD session the other day, that how can a supplier communicate with the trade unions if there is not a CBA relations? I mean, it doesn't really have to be CBA relations, but we have these common examples that, you know, in the social dialogue platform now, if the common interest is something important like preventing gender-based violence and harassment, we could easily come together, work on advancing gender equality in the factories, as well as other issues that is going to be tackled together. So I think this is important to come together, because I can't see any other strong stakeholder to reporting the risks in the coming future.
Thank you, Pinar. That's a very good answer indeed. So for those of you who don't know, Industrial, it's indeed a global union federation that has affiliates all across the world, and they can tell you which trade unions are the ones to speak to. Looking at the time, we have 2 minutes, and I'm just quickly asking Vivian if I missed a question. If not...
I think we're all good.
Yeah, great, thank you. If not, please feel free to contact the organizers, WageIndicator Foundation, or any of the unions or participants that you've seen here. It has been a very interesting session. I think I've mentioned that a million times. We've seen the power of female workers organizing themselves, coming together. Also, the role of female data collectors, for example, because yeah, it's of course not strange to understand that when women have a safe space to talk with each other on topics like menstrual leave or lactation rooms or whichever female issues there might be or topics, it's easier to talk to when you're speaking with people that can relate to it. Meaningful stakeholder engagement is key. So if you are a brand in the session, please read up on this. There's a framework. There are multiple frameworks, I think, and very practical tools on how to do this. It is very easy and clear to say that without the involvement of workers, the actual rights holders for whom HRDD has been made, it is impossible to really comply and to remediate your issues or risks that you see. So please always involve trade unions and the correct trade unions whenever you would like to comply with the HRDD steps. Thank you so much to all the organizers and all the speakers. The data that has been presented is very valuable. I think that a lot of participants here can also use it for social dialogue or other negotiations. I'm not really sure if I'm missing anything. If I did, Vivian, please comment or add. Apologies if I have mispronounced any name or anything in this session. And yes, I would like to thank you very much. Have a nice remaining few hours of the OECD forum, and look forward to meeting you all virtually or someday maybe physically. Thank you very much.